So I'm going to move on. If everyone's still fine, I'm very excited to get this going, Jay. So if you don't mind, I just want to give a little introduction for the viewers and for anyone who's going to watch the video. So I'm going to kick it off. I'm just going to pin your video if you do not mind, just so people can see you. So in a little bit about Jay, everybody is in 2014, Jay's father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. It was devastating. Jay also had a large amount of credit card debt. His job paid him decently, but didn't love what he didn't love what he did, and his marriage was falling apart. Jay started reading everything he could about how to deal with the grief, get out of this rut, and turn his life around. What he learned to develop was a skill that changed his life completely. The skill that Jay learned was self-observation. Jay learned to look objectively at how he operates, how he thinks, how he feels, and how he behaves. Jay learned to understand why he does the things he does and how to change his behavior. He also does this by developing the skill, which in turn he learned how to be more resilient, perform better, lead better, and work better with others. Mindfulness has been the one practice that turned his life around. Jay also joined Tesla and in under 4 years worked his way up to running the sales training at a national level. Jay started a business. He's now happy and in a healthy relationship. Jay's mission is to bring mindfulness to the workplace where it's so desperately needed, with companies struggling with employee burnout, high turnover rates, low sales and performance numbers. So all these things, and leadership challenges, these are all things we hear on a daily basis. So a little bit just extra to add to Jay's introduction is he's a proud father. He's a sore loser at hide and go seek. So am I. So am I. And then he says, my daughter doesn't play by the rules. I know that struggle with my brother, so I can relate. He graduated from, do I pronounce it correct? Seton?
Yes.
Seton Hall University. He's a certified mindfulness trainer. He's a house nut. Although he's not a fan of avocado, how is that possible? Mentor and a coach. He's a believer in the limitless of human capability, a foodie, and an audio bookworm. So without any delays, welcome to Coffee Chats with Jess, Jay, and I'm so grateful to have you on the show. I understand you're a very busy man, and I appreciate you taking the time to have this chat with me. And before we get into the nice, fun bits, I just want to say, if you can describe mindfulness in 3 words for everybody.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for that very kind introduction, Jess. I'm honored to be here with you, and Louise was fantastic. I got so much from listening to Louise, so fantastic guest to have on. So 3 words to describe mindfulness: awareness,
Yes.
insight, acceptance. Those would be my 3. Where awareness is the most obvious one for those who've looked into mindfulness, and that we have the practice itself is to maintain awareness of the present moment, to do so objectively and without judgment. Yeah. Insight, I use insight because insight, I believe, is what we gather. We gather insight about ourselves, insight into how we think, how we feel, how we behave, how we react, our patterns, our programming. Yeah. And insight into how we relate to others. You had a very good quote at the very beginning of this where you suggested how we connect with other people and the conversations that we have. Yeah. There's insight that we gather there. And then I would say acceptance, in that we become much more accepting of the nature of reality. Because the opposite, the opposite is resistance. And all of human distress, psychological distress, is due to our resistance. So what mindfulness does for us is allow us to accept what is and then take action to change it without resisting. We embrace the present moment.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you so much. That's such a great way to start your coffee chat. So the biggest thing that intrigued me about Jay's profile, for everybody that hasn't seen you on LinkedIn, and if you haven't, you should go and check Jay out. But why is mindfulness not for yogis? That's like the big question, because everybody used to think I'm a crazy person or something.
Well, the line is mindfulness is not just for yogis.
Just for yogis. Yeah.
Yes, is an
Okay.
important word there, because what I mean by that, and
Yeah.
I have to give credit to my girlfriend who came up with that,
Oh,
actually,
awesome.
because we were
Give
talking
credit
through
where
it, and I
credit's
said,
due.
ultimately, what I want to share with the world is that this is not just for the person who you might imagine wearing an orange robe and
Yeah.
is out in the mountains or something like that.
Yeah.
This is something that is applicable to all of us. And when you take away the esoteric stuff and all this the head in the sky type of stuff, if we look
Yeah.
at it practically, what we're ultimately saying is just get more in touch with reality, your experience of what's happening right here and right now.
Actually happening.
Right, what's actually happening, and to recognize the difference between what is actually happening and what's the story you're telling yourself. Right? And that's everybody. We're all telling a story all the time,
Yeah, me too.
right? And so if we recognize the story, we see the subjectivity that we're adding to things and how it's causing us the distress, and
Yeah.
we can become more detached from it. That to me is something that everyone can find benefit from. And it
Yes.
doesn't require you to be on a retreat for 6 months and away from society. It could be something that you do every single day.
100%. What I liked what you said is the actual reality, like the actual, because we all build the stories. I've done that. We've all done that. I mean, we do that on a daily basis. We build our own little reality in our head, but it's looking at yourself objectively. So I'm here and taking myself out and looking at myself objectively and understanding my subjectivities, if that makes sense.
Yes.
If I'm very visual, so you'll see my hands go everywhere. Okay, awesome. That's very interesting and very insightful. Thank you for that. So the other thing I wanted to ask is, does mindfulness exist in the workplace, and to what extent? Really, really, like really, really?
It depends on the organization, the company. There are some companies who do take it very seriously and infuse it into their culture. We know of some
Yeah.
companies that have had training programs for years, over a decade. While I've never worked at Google, so I can't give firsthand experience, I
Yeah.
do know that Google has had a mindfulness training program for over a decade, I believe now.
Really?
Aetna has a program. General Mills has a program. And so many of these organizations have done the work to infuse mindfulness into their organizations.
Okay.
So as much as I would love to answer it, so either yes or no, it's
Not already a yes or no.
it's not really yes or no, because it is mindfulness in the workplace. It all depends on the individuals who are there, the leaders, because some people are very mindful but wouldn't call it that.
Yeah.
Some people I've even worked with, some of these amazing leaders at Tesla were some of the most mindful people I've ever met, yet
Yeah.
they've never termed how they behave to be a mindful behavior. That's just, the term is different. But I would
Okay.
say I've
I like
encountered
that.
many people who have that natural ability
Yeah.
to be considerate of others in a way where they're not caught up in their own ego. They're looking at
Yes.
things as it is, right?
Yes.
So to answer you, I guess, with how it could be, I think it can be in the workplace,
Yeah.
done so in an effective way, when a company really prioritizes it.
And
And
embeds it into their culture, hey?
exactly, if it's infused within the culture,
Yeah.
and we're not doing some band-aid attempts to try to create a bit of relief and to, at the surface level, make it appear that we're trying to do things to improve mental well-being, but
100%.
rather we want to shift the way in which each employee experiences working here.
Yeah.
That is what it takes, and you're starting to see it little by little, but there's a lot of work to be done.
Okay. And in terms of seeing it, is there any practical examples that you've seen in the workplace that are working, in your opinion? This is just, off the topic of my head, off my head at the moment. Yeah. Is there some things that are working? I know they've introduced at this company back in SA, where they have a quiet room. They call it a pause room. So that's been, working there. So is there any other things that you've come across that you can obviously share, that's not too confidential?
So that's the first thing that came to mind because it's very visual in my head,
Yeah.
Jess.
Are you also visual?
Yeah, it's just, I'd say it depends. Sometimes I'm auditory, and that's why I
Awesome.
tend to close my eyes to like listen through. Um,
Yeah.
there's something called Buddha booths that I met the CEO of Buddha booths recently, and it's like that. It's like a little booth, little room, some place where organizations have something that visually you see, right? That indicates,
Yeah.
hey, this is important to the culture here for people to have the opportunity to take a break.
Yeah.
So I've seen that be effective.
Okay, cool.
I also think when, there are investments made by the organization to bring in larger, or I should say more full-length workshops
Yeah.
by which a facilitator, well, obviously we're doing this virtually now, has an opportunity to work with the leadership, not just in a 1 hour workshop, but to go beyond that, 8 weeks and so on, to
Yeah.
work with a team. There is transformational shifts there that we see, 8,
I
12-week
like that.
programs. So we've seen some of the effectiveness in the numbers as well. For example, I think Aetna's results were fascinating. I think it was a I'm forgetting the number exactly, 26% reduction in stress rates amongst
Wow.
those who went through their
So there's
program.
actual, evidence. It's evidence-based.
Exactly. And what they also saw was productivity increase significantly as well. So what happens, right, is naturally an employee has a tendency to get distracted
Mm.
and surf the web, do something completely out of the work that they're supposed to be doing. And
Yeah.
what we see is that on average, I think it's 77 minutes a day is what the research shows. Employees are not focusing on their work. They're looking at content that is outside of their work. And what
Okay.
Aetna was able to establish in their program was a significant increase in the amount of time people spent in their work. And when you put a number to that, a dollar amount, it
Yeah.
was in the millions of dollars every year of additional productivity with all the employees that were now much more focused,
Yeah.
not getting distracted, and also simply more effective, because what meditation and mindfulness does to the brain is that it taps into your creativity and taps into your intuition, which
That natural instinct, that natural ability.
right, to go to places that you wouldn't necessarily have thought. Because what happens is when you're in a state of fight or flight, or you're in stress, or you're in anxiety, your
Mm.
brain doesn't, those areas of the brain are not being accessed. They can't both be accessed at the same time.
No.
There's a default mode network and there's task positive network. When you're in the default mode network, you have certain areas of the brain that are helpful, like planning and things like that. But
Yeah.
outside of that, you can't access too much of your prefrontal cortex because your brain is more focused on survival. Whereas in the present moment, through more mindfulness practice, you access what's called the task positive network. And there is much more action. There's much more, I'm in the moment. I'm in a flow state, which many people know about,
I
being in a
like
flow
that
state.
flow state. Yeah.
And to your point, you tap into your creativity from there.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's such a different, and like I said, this is my third chat with someone that, an expert in mindfulness, or, going on that journey. And you've just shown a whole different perspective. So thank you for that. And you're bringing the realness from mindfulness into the workplace, if that makes sense. You speak about numbers, you speak about productivity, you speak about things that you're really going to get the organizations to engage. So you are possibly changing that thing about mindfulness. It links to why mindfulness is not just for yogis.
Right.
It links
Exactly.
completely to that. I can see it. I just had like a aha moment. Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing that. So my next question comes down to, so when coaching individuals and teams on mindfulness, does your strategy change or does it stay the same? And are there any differences? So if you're coaching can you coach people in groups for mindfulness? Can't you? I just want to understand that dynamic.
Absolutely. There are differences,
Okay.
but so there's three different things to point out. There's the individual, there's a group coaching, and then there's team coaching. So those are three different things, right?
Okay.
So, the individual, it's one-on-one. It is, I'm seeking to understand the challenges you're facing. I'm seeking to understand the stories that you're telling yourself, right? What are the stories? What is the
What's that
subjective
person's
meaning?
reality?
Yeah, what's the subjective meaning that you're giving to the things that you're experiencing? And I could do
Okay.
that at a one-on-one level
Yeah.
effectively. Now, in a group, I would say it's very much the same. However, the difference is you have others who are listening. And the effectiveness of that is if I'm doing this, let's say with person A, person B is listening and
Yeah.
gathering and retaining what it is that's being discussed. That conversation
Yeah.
creates the aha moments, right? For another person. So that's why I'm a big fan of group coaching and with a group that is very comfortable, you know, their
Yeah.
psychological safety that they can
Yeah.
share openly becomes like a small community.
Yeah.
And then team, it's a little bit different, right? Because a team, if these are people who work together constantly, you want to create mindfulness amongst the team, right?
Yes.
So with group coaching, you don't have so much cross talking, meaning person A is not really talking to person B that much, unless there's an activity that I have in mind. But with a
Okay.
team, I would like them to engage amongst each other so that they can
Build that.
build it together, effectively communicate, practice mindful listening, see or cultivate the compassion for each one of their teammates so they can work together more effectively over time. So
Awesome.
that's the component, I think, with a team that's so important. And I would also say, I'll leave this, I'll leave it at this. The leader, of course, needs additional support in that the leader has to recognize that there are things that he or she must do to create the empowerment amongst their team and
Yeah.
to show the empathy and lead by example while and this is the hardest thing for leaders to do, learning how to let go. Because one of the
Yes.
problems with human beings in general is that when we get to a position of power, we never want to let it go. We want to hold on to it. But the most effective leaders, Jess, in my experience
Yeah.
at Tesla and my experience in other companies and working with other companies, the
Yeah.
best leaders are the ones who don't try to control everything, who
That's
seek,
amazing.
who seek out others' opinions and who don't try to make it about them.
Yeah, genuinely seek out others' opinions. I hear you.
Correct.
I hear you. So basically, that was going to lead to sort of a question that's off, off topic, off script, if I want to call it. Is when you do those team coaching sessions, or with mindfulness, does the leader sit in on that, or is the leader outside of that? The reason why I ask this is, if the leader's in there, how open is the team to talk in that sense? Or do you have a separate session? That's just me trying to understand that dynamic.
I would say it's specific to the dynamic of that group.
Okay.
I would not want to put a cookie cutter
Yeah, there's no
approach.
one way.
Yeah, it's with organizations. I once heard it said. I'm trying to remember exactly how she worded it. I was speaking to the head of an HR
Yeah.
department, and she said, "It's like, oh yeah, companies are like their own organism, right?
Yes.
They're like their own little organism. So to try to assume that I understand the whole organism without going in and doing my discovery and finding out what it's like, making a great deal of assumption. So
Yeah.
I have to go in with an open mind to understand what the dynamics are of that team. And if
With
in
you.
doing so, I recognize there's much more value in removing the leader and having it with the team, I think that's the approach.
Yeah.
If there's more value in having the leader there because they've already established psychological safety amongst the group, then you're only going to create more cohesion amongst the team.
That's amazing.
So
Yeah.
if going in, there's a problem, right, that we have to solve and it has to
Yeah.
do with the leader, it may be best to start with sessions without the leader and then bring the leader
Slowly
in.
bringing him in when they're more
Exactly.
comfortable amongst themselves. That's
Correct.
very insightful. Very insightful. That was just a question for me. Like, I wanted to find out, because sometimes organizations are like, the leader has to be in this meeting, or they have to this. It's nice that you can make it situational based, and you can assess that organism fully before deciding that, before going into the session. So another question I had for you is, a lot of the world is digital and online for obvious reasons. But my question is, how has the virtual world impacted mindfulness? Is it practiced differently in virtual team settings? Like, how has this digital space impacted the way we coach or help people or teams? if that makes sense, if my question made sense.
It does make sense. There are challenges for sure with a virtual setting. I don't want to pretend and say like, oh, it's exactly the same.
It's
Yeah,
great.
it's perfect. You know, working with a team in person is exactly the same as working virtual. I think that would be misleading. It would just require a great deal of preparation.
Okay.
There has to be a good expectation setting prior to the start of a virtual session. And it really requires effective facilitation.
Okay.
What I mean is, if I'm in front of a group in person,
Yeah.
I have everybody's attention because we're in a group together. You're sitting right amongst your peers,
Yeah.
and you're not going to be wandering off. You're not going to, right? But if I'm in a virtual setting, it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to have, you know, another window open, to be checking your phone, right? If your camera's off, all those things. So what I find is that there's a great deal of importance in setting expectation as to what will this look like?
Yeah.
So every employee or everyone I'm coaching, every individual I'm coaching has this understanding that these are not webinars by which you are listening and just taking notes. These are workshops in which you are participating and engaging in the practices that we are advising. And so if that is set early on, it could still create for a great session. Okay. Will it be as effective as an in-person session? I can't say it will. It's harder to say, but you can take extra additional steps to try to bring people into that place of being present, being here, being now in a virtual environment when those expectations are set effectively.
Awesome. So the question, so basically what I heard you say is preparation, expectation, create the set the expectations. Would you say, I've seen some people actually do this in big group settings where we're joining a call, not necessarily around mindfulness. It was about relationships and resilience, I think. And the lady, actually, the speaker actually started by setting the tone by having everyone, you know, close their eyes and, you know, get into that moment. Would you say that could, maybe, I'm just, you know, throwing it out there, maybe that could be also another thing of starting the session like that, getting everyone into that present moment digitally?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be something to do in an in-person session or a virtual session. And how I would normally go about it is to begin with an activity, an exercise by which everybody participates. And a guided meditation or guided practice like that is one way. It could be through, you know, engaging through polling, through a game, even through chat, whatever it is, to get others, to get everyone started on participating early on and setting the tone that this is a meeting by which we're all going to be engaging and conversing.
Okay, perfect. And then how would you say mindfulness could lead to freedom? And when I mean by freedom is freedom of your own irrational thoughts, or freedom, you know, from your own mind, or that fogginess that happens. How would you say mindfulness could lead to that, or does it, or what's your opinion on that?
That all depends on how we define freedom. I think I would say the outcome that one can expect if done consistently is not to say your stress will go away. I think that's not true. Yeah. I don't think those out there who teach mindfulness say, hey, I will remove your stress or your anxiety or your depression. That's just not true. But the freedom is that you will relate to it differently. Yeah. And that is the goal. Is
so relating differently.
Relating to it. So if you imagine a person who has never practiced mindfulness would say, let's say I am stressed, right? Yeah. I am stressed. The person who practices mindfulness consistently would get to a place where they would say instead, I am experiencing stress. There's a difference.
The word experiencing stress, because in that moment they're experiencing stress. It doesn't mean they're stressed all the time. Did I understand correctly?
That's part of it. And I would also say they are not identifying with the stress.
Okay.
So in other words, what happens in the mind is that we experience stress, anger, whatever it is, and we attach to it, we cling to it, and it stays with us and stays with us and stays with us. And I am stressed stays and stays and stays and builds and builds and builds. With someone who maybe reached that place of freedom, right? It is, the stress has arisen within me and I am experiencing the stress. I see it as an object of my attention in the same way I see this pen in my hand, right? I'm looking at the stress. I am not the stress. It's just something that's arising in my awareness. And just that alone, the ability to detach from it in a compassionate way, it's very important to call that out, in a compassionate way.
Non-judgmental.
Exactly. It would cause the stress to dissipate on its own. Not even cause it. That's maybe not the right word. It allows the stress to dissipate and go away. And that, in my opinion, is freedom, because then you're not at the mercy.
That's exactly it. That's exactly how I was trying to define this freedom, because there's been times that I've been in again with the debates. I use my husband a lot because he's comfortable with that. I did get his consent, just in case anyone is wondering. So when we get into like a debate or something, I will take myself back and see my thoughts and my reactions and everything. I can see it, if that makes sense. I'm very visual. So here's everything going on, the argument, everything. I step out of it, and literally during that debate, I'm like, babe, I'm sorry. I know what I did here. This is my fault. What is your fault? And then he's like, you've gone too fast for me. I haven't processed everything. He's like, I haven't processed everything. Give me a minute. And then I give him a minute, and then he comes to it. So I totally can relate when you say that you remove yourself to see that stress, to see that anxiety. So I can relate in that sense. I don't do it as often as one day I would like to, if I can say. But for now, it's been really, really, really insightful in myself. I've gained so much insight into myself, and also understanding that I have not amazing qualities, and loving those things about me too, is also being, the non-judgmental, that compassionate, being kind with myself, being gentle, I think has really helped that journey. So I can totally relate. So the other thing I wanted to just ask you is, what are you up to? Do you have any cool things coming out that you can share with us, that I can share with people that are going to view this? Anything that you want to share additional?
Yeah, happy to share. So currently working on, and it should be released within a week is my goal, to have a free course that would be available. Anyone can go through, and the course is called 60 Minutes to Stillness. So it only takes about 60 minutes to go through. And with it, you get 5 techniques that help to transform some of the chaos and the stress to a bit of clarity. I think you used that word before, to be clear, clarity, focus, and reclaiming that inner peace within you in the professional work environment or anything in life. So that's something I'm very excited to share. And from there, I'm working, I'll be launching an 8-week program where we'll deep dive with individuals through a group coaching session, the way I was describing it before. Virtual, of course.
Okay.
All virtual.
I have to make sure, because it's very, very different times.
Yes, all virtual. So it includes group coaching sessions, videos, guided meditations, one-on-one coaching sessions as well. So it's a very robust course to take what took me years to learn and develop, to do it in under 8 weeks.
And isn't that just amazing that you can actually take what you took so long to learn and put it into something that's feasible, something that you can see, if that makes sense?
Exactly. That's
what I'm struggling. I've been struggling, Jay. Basically, a lot of these things have been happening to me. I've been on a real deep journey. Let's call it a deep journey, deep into myself. And and me being me, I have to conceptualize things just in my brain, and I don't know, all of that. And that's why I decided to have these coffee chats. I needed to have, people feed that curiosity in the sense of, I wanted to know, when I do this, this, and this in my fights or in my arguments, whatever, oh, that's what they call it. Or that's, because it's been a lot of, throughout my whole life, not my whole life, it's been a little bit foggy, if I can call it, but that fog settling, the fog settling, and I'm like, I see clearer, if that makes sense. So I'm really like living through this journey at the moment, and that's what led me to this chat. So from my side, I'd love to post any links or additional resources or anything that you don't mind sharing with us, please, that I can post with these key takeaways. I only do this, and the reason why I want to post those resources. This is not for me, just a coffee chat and then we move on and we carry. I want to create some value. And the value is, A, we have the speaker that comes and shares their perspective and insight. And B, not only do we give that, richness and that authenticity through this conversation, we still give them resources that they can go and view, because a lot of times we have these things and then we don't really have things, resources to go and look at and do more research and deep dive if we're really that interested into it. So from my side, I don't have any other questions. You've answered my questions to the T. Like, I've been trying to, I'm thinking of how you answered. Could I ask this? You've answered everything of my curiosities through this coffee chat with me. And so from my side, there's just a final remark is that I will be posting this on my socials. I'll tag you. If you're comfortable, I'm going to be also putting it on YouTube, and, just create that awareness for now. And, I don't want this to be the last coffee chat. Hopefully we can have some more coffee chats about deep, weird things that I like, because I've got strange curiosities and I just want someone to chat to and, just have that relationship. It's awesome. So from my side, Jay, really, really, I'm really grateful for having you on the Coffee Chats with Jess. I will be posting this. If you have any other questions for Jay, if anyone is, watching now, or anyone that's going to watch the video, if you have any other questions, please go check him out on LinkedIn, or if not, you can use the hashtag Coffee Chats with Jess, and then I will redirect the question to Jay. From my side, thank you so much for everyone for tuning in. I don't know if anyone does want to ask questions. It's sometimes, we have like 20, 30 people, sometimes we have 5, but the main thing is creating that awareness and creating that space. So from my side, thank you so much, Jay. Thank you so much for sharing this journey with me and coming on my journey a little bit. And thank you.
Thank you, Jess. I really appreciate it. And I think it's a great thing that you're bringing so many of us along with you on this journey to learn with you. So I think it's fantastic what you're doing.
Oh, awesome. I'm glad you're learning. I thought I was the one that's doing all the learning.
I think we all are. And, it's fascinating. So I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay. Bye.